Welcome to the deep dive. So, today, let's maybe forget the real early days of Bitcoin, the cypherpunks, for just a minute.
Okay.
We're seeing something else emerge now. People are calling it a new guard. Experts, but from like different fields, finance, tech, macroeconomics.
Right. It's not just the original believers anymore. You've got these established figures bringing their specific expertise to Bitcoin.
Yeah, and they're not just holding it, right? They're
Yeah.
actively translating what Bitcoin is all about for a much wider, more mainstream audience.
It's a really fascinating shift, seeing how the conversation is evolving because of them.
Absolutely. So our mission today really is to get a handle on the core ideas, the sort of tenets that this new guard seems to be championing. We've looked at analyses of these key people, and we want to pull out what's essential for understanding where Bitcoin might be heading, not just price stuff today.
No, definitely deeper than that. And what's really striking when you look across their work is how certain themes just keep popping up. Well, we've kind of boiled it down to 5 key things. There's this real emphasis on long-term thinking, way beyond next quarter.
Okay.
Then, using first principles reasoning, really thinking from the ground up. Also, intellectual sovereignty, that whole don't trust, verify idea.
Right. Understanding it for yourself.
Exactly. Plus, a more, let's say, considered view on energy use. And finally, a really strong belief in monetary justice.
Monetary justice. Okay.
Yeah.
Those 5 give us some, well, maybe surprising angles on Bitcoin beyond just speculation.
Definitely. They offer a richer framework.
Okay, so let's dive in. Maybe start with Michael Saylor, CEO of MicroStrategy. His arrival on the scene was, well, it felt pretty big. August 2020 sticks out.
Whoa. Big is an understatement. Seismic, like you said earlier. MicroStrategy basically on his call started swapping its company cash reserves for Bitcoin.
That first $250 million, I mean, heads turned everywhere. Now it's billions.
It absolutely forced boardrooms everywhere to at least think about Bitcoin as a treasury asset. It wasn't just theory anymore.
And the way Saylor talks about it, it's not just an investment. He uses phrases like digital energy, monetary engineering.
Right, which are quite specific. Digital energy kind of reframes the whole mining debate, doesn't it? Focuses on the energy securing the network, not just consuming it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And monetary engineering.
That points straight at the fixed supply, the predictable issuance. The opposite of central banks tinkering with monetary policy. It's designed, engineered scarcity.
He had that tweet, too, the swarm of cyber hornets serving the goddess of wisdom. Very vivid.
Yeah, memorable. It paints Bitcoin as this sort of relentless, intelligent, self-defending system working towards, well, sound money, truth.
But what really sets him apart, I think, is that never sell philosophy. He's not talking years. He's talking like centuries. That's pure long-term thinking.
Exactly. It's foundational for him, not speculative. And, it's interesting, MicroStrategy's stock has actually done better than the S&P 500 since they started buying Bitcoin.
That's a pretty compelling stat for other CEOs watching.
You bet it is. And he doesn't stop there. He talks about Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, maybe even for nations.
That's a huge vision.
It is. He's arguing it provides economic sovereignty, it embodies sound money, freedom, property rights in a digital form. Big ideas.
And there were those hints about maybe burning private keys someday, like Satoshi might have done.
Yeah, that really underscores the commitment, doesn't it? Prominently taking coins out of circulation would be the ultimate statement on scarcity and his belief in its long-term value.
So basically, he's pushing for a kind of Bitcoin standard, but for corporate finance first.
That's the core argument. In a world of, let's face it, uncertain fiat currencies, holding Bitcoin isn't the reckless move not holding it might be.
Okay, let's shift gears. Jeff Booth. He comes at it from a totally different angle, right?
Yes.
Tech entrepreneur, wrote The Price of Tomorrow.
Yeah, Booth's perspective is really fascinating because he starts with deflation. Most Bitcoin talk is inflation hedge, inflation hedge.
Right.
Booth says, hang on, technology, think Moore's Law, software, automation. It's naturally deflationary. Stuff gets cheaper and better.
And his point is that our current money system needs inflation to work to keep the debt cycle going.
Precisely. So you have this fundamental clash. Technology pushing prices down, the monetary system needing prices to go up. He thinks that tension is going to break the system eventually.
Okay, so where does Bitcoin fit in for him? It's not just about fighting inflation then.
It's more subtle, yeah. He sees Bitcoin as the money that actually aligns with technological deflation. Its scarcity makes it suitable for a world where technology creates abundance.
That's a really different take. It's not resisting inflation, it's fitting deflation.
Exactly. It's money for a digital, abundant future, not just protection against the old system's problems.
He had that quote, the choice isn't between capitalism and communism, but between a system built on erosion of value versus one built on storing value.
That hits hard, doesn't it? It frames Bitcoin as this fundamental choice about whether your money holds its value over time or, well, doesn't.
So for Booth, Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation and potentially deflationary crashes, like both sides.
Kind of, yeah. If the system breaks in a deflationary way, traditional assets might crater. He suggests Bitcoin, being separate, could be a haven then too.
Interesting. And he also talks about Bitcoin enabling a truly global free market.
Yeah, the idea is that a neutral, sound money available everywhere could level the playing field, cut out the distortions from national fiat currencies, and let capital flow more efficiently.
And he's putting his money where his mouth is, right? With ego death capital.
Yeah, he's actively investing in companies building on Bitcoin, trying to build out that ecosystem he envisions.
He must see the Lightning Network as pretty crucial then, for the actual money part.
Oh, absolutely. He gets that for Bitcoin to be global money for everyday stuff, you need that speed and those low fees. Scalability is key.
And his whole approach, it really goes back to that first principles reasoning we mentioned, analyzing tech deflation first, then seeing where Bitcoin fits.
That's his method. Start with the fundamentals of technology and economics. Don't just assume the current financial system is the only way.
Okay, let's keep moving. Preston Pish, different background, again, former Army officer, runs the Investors Podcast Network.
Pish brings this real analytical rigor. You can almost feel the military precision in how he breaks things down. Frameworks, systems.
And he seems very focused on making Bitcoin understandable for traditional value investors,
Right.
people used to stocks and bonds.
That's been a huge contribution. He's built bridges. He translates Bitcoin into concepts that someone like Warren Buffett's followers might grasp, which isn't easy.
How does he do that?
He uses systems thinking a lot, explaining how monetary policy, energy markets, mining, how they all connect and influence each other within the Bitcoin system. It's not just one thing.
Right, it's not in a vacuum.
Exactly. And he's really helped shift the conversation for some people away from just Bitcoin's volatile speculation towards, okay, maybe this is a prudent long-term strategy.
His Bitcoin Fundamentals series has been pretty influential there, I think.
Yeah. Definitely. He focuses on things like the network effect, how it gets stronger as more people use it, and the security model, not just the daily price swings.
He looks past the noise.
Yeah. He understands the value comes from the network itself, its robustness, its security guarantees.
Yeah.
Those are the long-term drivers.
There's that quote of his, Bitcoin doesn't care about your feelings, it cares about mathematics. Kind of sums it up.
It really does. It's a reminder that this thing runs on code, on cryptography, not on opinions. And that links back to intellectual sovereignty too, right?
ISO.
Because it forces you to understand the math, the code, the principles. You can't just rely on someone's feeling about it. You have to verify it yourself. Pish really pushes that education angle.
Don't trust, verify.
Okay.
Now, Greg Foss, he's got, 30 plus years in high yield credit? That's deep in the weeds of financial risk.
Oh, yeah. Foss has lived through crises, analyzed junk bonds, sovereign debt. He understands risk, especially credit risk and currency risk, from the inside. That gives him a totally unique lens on Bitcoin.
And he doesn't really talk about it like a tech thing, does he? It's more about credit default swaps, optionality.
Exactly. He speaks the language of institutional finance, of risk management. A CDS is basically insurance on debt, right? Foss frames Bitcoin in those terms. He even developed this idea of the BTC-free option value.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's a way to quantify Bitcoin's value as insurance against, catastrophic failure in the traditional system.
And his big line is that Bitcoin is the ultimate credit default swap against fiat currency failure.
That's the core of it. In a world drowning in government debt, with central banks printing money like there's no tomorrow, he sees Bitcoin as the ultimate insurance policy against those fiat currencies collapsing or just devaluing massively.
He calls the current fiat system a full-blown Ponzi scheme. That's blunt.
It is blunt, and it shows how worried he is about the sustainability of it all. The debt levels, the constant money creation. He sees Bitcoin as a necessary escape hatch.
He also calls Bitcoin a long volatility asset, like buying insurance on countries.
Yeah, think about it. When things get unstable in the traditional world, a country looks shaky, markets get volatile, what happens to the price of insurance? It goes up. Foss argues Bitcoin behaves similarly. It benefits from the system's instability.
So instability is almost good for Bitcoin in his model.
In a sense, yes. Its value as insurance increases as the perceived risk in the fiat system rises.
And he actually tries to value Bitcoin using CDS data, suggesting it could be worth way more.
Right. He's trying to build a fundamental valuation based on this insurance concept, looking at the cost of insuring sovereign debt. His models point to a much higher potential value for Bitcoin based on those risks.
That's fascinating. And he argues that even conservative investors, like bond investors, should own some Bitcoin.
Yeah, as insurance. He tells fixed income folks, look, your bonds are exposed to inflation risk, currency debasement risk, even default risk. You need some insurance against that, and Bitcoin is potentially the best insurance out there.
So it's about hedging the rest of your portfolio.
Exactly. Plus, he points out it's a parallel system, a different kind of store of value, and crucially, it doesn't really move in lockstep with stocks and bonds. That makes it great for diversification.
The non-correlation is key.
Huge for portfolio managers.
Okay, one more key figure, Jack Mallers. He seems much more focused on the using Bitcoin every day aspect, right? Strike Lightning Network.
Totally. Mallers is a builder, while the others are analyzing the macro, the investment case. Mallers is on the ground building the payment rails so you can actually use Bitcoin easily.
An interesting background too, right? Family ties to traditional finance, Chicago Board of Trade, futures.
Yeah, it shows that even people steeped in the old system see the need for something new. His background probably gives him insight into exactly what problems need solving in payments.
He founded Zap, then Strike. And Strike is all about making Bitcoin and Lightning user-friendly.
Super user-friendly. The goal is to hide the complexity. You can send dollars, they travel over Bitcoin Lightning rails, arrive as dollars or local currency. The user barely needs to know Bitcoin is involved.
And it's expanding globally, UK, Europe, Africa, Latin America. That's real adoption.
It is. He's targeting places where payments are slow, expensive, or people are unbanked.
Yeah.
Trying to offer a better, cheaper alternative.
His role in El Salvador adopting Bitcoin, that was a huge moment, especially his focus on remittances.
Oh, that announcement was powerful. You could hear the passion about helping people avoid crazy Western Union fees, helping the unbanked. For Mallers, it's deeply personal, it seems. It's about financial inclusion.
And Strike keeps integrating more, right? Point-of-sale systems, paying bills.
Yeah, those are the unglamorous but essential steps, making it possible to live your financial life, or parts of it, through this new infrastructure. That increases utility dramatically.
So his core belief is just that Bitcoin plus Lightning is simply a better payment network.
Yeah.
Faster, cheaper, more open.
Pretty much. More innovative, more inclusive, more efficient than the legacy rails we're stuck with now.
And it ties back to that principle of monetary justice, giving everyone access.
Absolutely. A censorship-resistant, permissionless system that anyone with an internet connection can potentially access. That's a huge deal for billions of people excluded from the current system.
He seems laser-focused on just lowering barriers, solving real problems people have with money.
Yeah, he's a practical guy with a big vision. He sees the potential, but he knows you have to build the tools people can actually use today.
Okay, so we've looked at Saylor, Booth, Pish, Foss, Mallers. Quite a diverse group. What's the unifying thread here? What connects them?
Well, despite the different angles, you really do see those 5 principles weaving through all of them.
Remind us again?
Long-term thinking Saylor's multi-century view is the extreme example, but they all look beyond the short term. First principles, Booth dissecting deflation is a prime case. Intellectual sovereignty Pish demanding verification, energy consciousness acknowledging the energy use but framing it as necessary for security. And monetary justice, Mahler's whole mission with Strike embodies that.
Right, you can see elements in each one.
And beneath those principles, there's a shared bedrock. Belief in decentralization as crucial. Belief in sound money principles, predictable supply, resistance to manipulation. Belief in Bitcoin as a necessary inflation hedge in the current world.
They all see that fundamental value proposition.
Absolutely. And they also see it as a major technological innovation, something genuinely new, with the power to actually have a positive impact on society globally.
It's not just finance for them.
No, it's bigger than that. It's about improving systems, empowering individuals.
And I think your point earlier about them being a translation layer is really key.
That's maybe their most important function right now. Saylor translates for CEOs. Foss translates for bond traders and risk managers. Pish for value investors. Booth for tech folks and macro thinkers. Mahler's translates it into usable products for everyone.
They make it make sense to different tribes, basically.
Exactly. They bridge the gap between Bitcoin's complexity and these different audiences who wouldn't otherwise engage with it or wouldn't understand its relevance to them.
And that ability to communicate, to educate, has been vital for Bitcoin moving more mainstream, hasn't it?
Immense. Without articulate voices like theirs explaining it in terms people understand, Bitcoin could have easily stayed stuck in a technical niche. They've helped broaden the conversation significantly.
So wrapping it up, the big takeaway is that this new guard is really shaping how Bitcoin is understood. They're taking these core ideas, the long-term view, first principles, sovereignty, energy, justice, and making them accessible.
Right. They're building on the original vision, but articulating its relevance for today's world for a much wider range of people and institutions. It's an ongoing translation effort.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners.
Yeah.
As you hear these different perspectives, the corporate strategist, the deflation theorist, the systems analyst, the risk expert, the payments builder, which one clicks most with you?
Yeah, thinking about which framework resonates and why can really clarify your own understanding of what Bitcoin might be and what its potential impact could be.
It definitely gives you more tools to think about its future. We'd encourage everyone to maybe dig a bit deeper into these individuals' work. It's a really rich seam of insights